"Bow down right now," the man of the mountain ordered his frightened fat wife. But what happened next? The wind was cold that morning when Clara stepped out of the small cabin she called home. Her hands trembled slightly as she pulled her wool shawl tighter around her shoulders. The mountains towered ahead, silent, ancient, and merciless. Somewhere up there, her husband, Samuel, was already awake, working by the forge. He was a mountain of a man, broad shoulders, thick beard, eyes that burned like embers. People in town called him the man of the mountain. But for Clara, he was something else. A mystery, a storm she could never fully understand. That morning, as she reached the old workshop, the sound of iron clanging filled the air. Samuel stood shirtless by the fire, his muscles glistening with sweat despite the chill. His hammer struck the anvil in rhythmic fury, each blow echoing through the valley. Clara hesitated at the door, her heart beating faster than she wanted it to. "Come here," he said without looking up. His deep voice carried the authority of thunder. She took a few steps forward, clutching her apron nervously. "I was just bringing you some breakfast," she stammered. Samuel turned then, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "Put it down," he said quietly, but his tone made her hands shake. "We're not done yet." He reached for a pair of tongs and placed a piece of glowing metal on the table. "Hold this," he commanded. Her voice wavered. "It's too hot." "Inclinate ahora mismo," he said in a low growl, his accent heavy, his words sharp as steel. "Bend now." She froze, her breath catching in her throat. But there was no anger in his eyes, only something deeper. Something like sorrow. Slowly, she obeyed, leaning over the table. He guided her hands, his calloused fingers brushing against her soft palms. "Don't be afraid of the heat," he whispered. "The fire doesn't hurt if you respect it." The words sank deep into her, though she didn't fully understand them. For the next few minutes, they worked together, his strong hands teaching, her trembling ones learning. It was strange, the same man who frightened her also made her feel safe. But when she looked up again, his eyes weren't on the metal. They were on her. "Clara," he said quietly, "you still don't trust me, do you?" She looked away. "You don't tell me things. You disappear for hours in the woods. People say." He slammed the hammer down, sparks flying. "People say too much." Clara's heart jumped. "Then tell me the truth," she whispered. He didn't answer. He only looked out the window toward the mountain peaks, where the mist coiled like ghosts. "Some truths," he finally said, "can burn worse than fire." And before she could ask more, he walked out, leaving her alone with the echo of his words and the glowing iron cooling slowly on the table. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay awake listening to the wind push against the cabin walls. Something about his tone, the way he'd said "bend now," replayed in her mind again and again. It wasn't cruelty, it was fear. Fear of what? The next morning, Samuel didn't come home. His tools were gone. His coat still hung on the peg by the door, dripping from last night's storm. Clara waited until dusk before deciding to go after him. She followed the trail leading up the mountain, her boots sinking in the wet ground. As she climbed, she noticed strange footprints, heavy, deliberate, and not just his. Someone else had been there. By the time she reached the old forge near the cliff, the sky had turned gold. Smoke rose from the chimney. Inside, she saw him, Samuel, talking in low tones to a man she didn't recognize. "The girl doesn't know," the stranger said. "She doesn't need to," Samuel replied. "If she finds out, everything burns." Clara's heart stopped. Everything burns. She stepped back, a branch snapping under her boot. Samuel's head turned sharply toward the door. "Clara," he called. She didn't answer. She ran down the trail, breathless, tears mixing with rain. But even as she stumbled through the mud, a part of her wanted to believe, maybe there was a reason. Maybe he was protecting her from something. Behind her, his voice echoed through the trees, deep and desperate. "Clara, wait. Don't go near the river." But it was too late. Because by the time she reached the riverbank, she saw it, half buried in the mud, something that didn't belong there. A small metal box, scorched black, still warm to the touch. And on the lid, carved deep into the steel, were 3 words. "Forged in fire." Her hands trembled. The river roared beside her, wild and merciless. She didn't know what was inside that box, but one thing was clear: Samuel had been keeping a secret that could change everything. She turned toward the sound of footsteps approaching fast. It was him. His face pale, his eyes full of something she'd never seen before. Not anger, not guilt, but fear. "Clara," he whispered, reaching out. "Whatever you do, don't open that box." And then, from deep within the forest, came a sound that froze her blood. A low growl, metallic, almost alive. She looked at Samuel, her voice shaking. "What did you do?" His jaw tightened. "I tried to save us." The wind howled around them, carrying the scent of smoke and iron. And in that moment, Clara knew this was only the beginning. The river roared louder now, as if the mountain itself had started to breathe. The air shimmered with a strange metallic scent, like burnt iron mixed with rain. Clara's fingers trembled around the scorched metal box, its surface still pulsing faintly with heat, alive, almost, in her hands. Samuel stepped closer, his voice a low warning. "Clara, give me that." She took a step back. "What is this, Samuel? What did you hide from me?" His face, rough and shadowed under the dripping strands of his hair, twisted with regret. "You shouldn't have come here. You don't understand what you're holding." "I understand enough," she snapped, her fear boiling into anger. "You've been sneaking off for days, talking to strangers in the woods. Now you tell me not to open something that has our initials burned into it. What is this?" Samuel's jaw clenched. His eyes flickered, not with fury, but with pain. "It's something I made a long time ago," he said. Before this life." Clara shook her head. "You're lying." "I wish I were." Lightning split the sky behind him, illuminating his frame, drenched, trembling, massive, yet fragile in a way she'd never seen before. He took another step closer, his boots sinking into the wet soil. "That box holds something that was meant to stay buried. I forged it with my own hands. And if you open it..." He hesitated, his voice breaking. "You'll wake it up." Clara's breath hitched. "Wake what up?" Before he could answer, a sharp crack echoed through the valley, the sound of metal twisting, snapping. The box in her hands vibrated violently, glowing a deep, unnatural red. She gasped and dropped it. Steam hissed as it hit the mud, the carved words, forged in fire, burning even brighter. Samuel lunged forward, scooping it up with his bare hands despite the heat. His skin sizzled, but he didn't flinch. "Run," he growled through gritted teeth. Clara stumbled backward, her mind spinning. "Samuel, run." She turned and ran. Through the trees, past the forge, her heart hammering in her chest. Behind her, the mountain seemed to groan. There was a sudden burst of light, then a thunderous roar that sent birds screaming into the darkening sky. When she finally stopped, panting, she was near the edge of their cabin clearing. She turned around, and froze. Through the trees, faint but real, she saw a figure. Not Samuel, taller, leaner. Its skin shimmered faintly in the firelight, metal beneath flesh. Its eyes glowed a dull, molten orange. It moved toward the forge, slow and deliberate. And Samuel was still there. He stood in front of it, shoulders squared, like a man facing his own shadow. Clara wanted to scream his name, but her voice caught in her throat. The creature stopped just a few steps from him. The silence between them was heavier than the storm itself. Then, she heard Samuel speak, calm, quiet, broken. "I thought I destroyed you." The creature tilted its head. Its voice, when it came, was metallic, distorted. "You can't destroy what you create, Samuel." She couldn't understand what she was seeing. It was as if the thing was born from the very forge, metal and man fused together, dripping with heat and fury. Clara backed away slowly, her body trembling. Every instinct told her to run, to hide, to forget she ever came up this mountain. But then she heard Samuel's cry, raw, human, desperate. "Clara, go inside, now." She hesitated only a second, then ran toward the cabin. The storm swallowed her, and for a long time she heard nothing but the sound of wind in her own heartbeat. When silence finally came, it was worse than the noise. Hours later, when dawn began to break, Clara was still awake, sitting by the small window, staring out toward the mountain. The forge's smoke no longer rose. Only thin trails of gray mist drifted across the valley. She couldn't stop shaking. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that creature's face, the metallic skin, the molten eyes, the way it spoke Samuel's name like it had known him all its life. Her thoughts tangled together. What did he mean? I forged it with my own hands. What had he done before they met? A soft creak at the door made her jump. She spun around, and there he was. Samuel stood in the doorway, his clothes torn, his hands blistered and blackened with soot. His chest heaved with exhaustion. His beard was streaked with ash. "Samuel," she whispered. He looked at her for a long moment before stepping inside. His voice was hoarse. "It's over. For now." "What was that thing?" she asked, barely above a whisper. He didn't answer right away. He sat heavily on the wooden chair, elbows on his knees, staring into the dying embers of the hearth. "Do you remember?" he said finally. "The night I told you I came here to start over." Clara nodded. "I lied," he said simply. Her heart tightened. "I came here to hide," he continued. "Years ago, before I met you, I worked for a man who wanted to create life from metal. He said flesh was weak, that we could build something better. I was young, foolish, and proud of my craft. I helped him forge the first prototype. We called it Elias." He looked up then, his eyes hollow. "That thing you saw tonight was Elias." Clara felt the air leave her lungs. "You built it." "I thought I killed it," he said quietly. "After it turned on us. It wasn't supposed to feel, but it did. It learned fear, rage, betrayal. And it hated me for it." He rubbed his face, his hands trembling. "I buried the last piece of its core in that box. The only way to destroy it was to melt it back in the fire that made it. But I couldn't bring myself to. I kept it, thinking, maybe one day I could fix what I broke." Clara sat beside him, silent. He turned to her, voice breaking. "You were never supposed to see that part of me, Clara. The man who plays God. The man who ruins everything he touches." She reached for his hand. "You're not that man anymore." He smiled weakly. "Maybe. But the mountain remembers." Outside, a low rumble echoed. Distant thunder, or something deeper. Samuel's gaze flickered toward the window. "It's not done," he murmured. "He's still out there." Clara squeezed his hand. "Then we fight him. Together." He looked at her then. Truly looked at her. And for the first time, she saw fear turn into something else. "Resolve. Clara," he said softly, "if you're with me, there's no turning back." She met his eyes. "I was never the one who turned away, Samuel." The silence stretched between them, fragile, intimate, alive. Then he stood, pulling her gently to her feet. "We'll need to go back to the forge," he said. "There's something I have to finish." "But what if he comes again?" Samuel's gaze hardened. "Then we end it." Outside, dawn spilled gold across the peaks, and for a brief moment, everything felt still. But deep within the forest, where the forge once glowed, a faint shimmer of red began to pulse beneath the soil, like a heartbeat waiting to rise. And though Clara couldn't see it, she felt it. The mountain was awake. The morning light was soft, but it did little to warm the chill that gripped Clara's heart. She and Samuel walked together up the mountain path, their boots crunching against the frost-hardened soil. The world around them was quiet, too quiet. No birds, no wind, just the echo of their footsteps, and the distant creak of metal in the cold air. Clara carried a lantern in one hand and an old satchel in the other. Inside it was what Samuel had called the heart of the forge, a glowing crystal shard, pulsing faintly like a living ember. It was all that remained of Elias's power. Samuel walked ahead, his broad shoulders tense beneath his coat. His hands were bandaged, the burns from the night before still raw. But his pace never faltered. "Are you sure he's still up there?" Clara asked quietly. Samuel nodded. "He won't leave. He was born from the mountain fire. It's the only home he's ever known." The path curved, revealing the old forge at the top of the ridge. It stood silent, smoke long gone, its stone walls cracked and blackened. But even from a distance, Clara could see faint orange light flickering inside, as if the fire had rekindled itself. Samuel stopped. "He's awake." A low hum began to rise from the ground, deep and rhythmic, like a heartbeat beneath the earth. The sound sent shivers crawling up Clara's spine. "Samuel," she whispered, "what if we can't stop him?" He looked back at her, his face rough, tired, but filled with something she hadn't seen before. Determination. Then we die trying. Dash dash dash. Inside the forge, the air was thick with smoke and heat. Metal tools lay scattered across the floor, melted in places as though a furnace had exploded from within. The anvil was split down the middle, glowing faintly red. And there, in the center of it all, stood Elias. He was taller now, his form more human than before, though his skin still shimmered with molten lines, veins of liquid metal glowing through his chest. His eyes were no longer bright orange but a dim, sorrowful gold. "Samuel," the creature said, its voice softer this time, less machine, more man. "You came back." Samuel stepped forward, his voice steady. "I came to end what I started." Elias tilted his head. "End me, or save me." Clara stayed near the doorway, her heart pounding. She could feel the heat radiating from Elias, alive, breathing, almost broken. "You were supposed to be perfect," Samuel said. "But I made you in my own image. Flawed, angry, afraid." The creature's molten eyes flickered. "You made me to serve. Then you left me in darkness. You taught me pain, and called it creation." Samuel's jaw tightened. "You weren't meant to feel pain. Neither were you," Elias whispered. "And yet you do." The silence that followed was unbearable. Then Clara spoke, her voice trembling. "If he was made to feel, then maybe he can choose. Maybe he doesn't have to be your enemy." Elias turned toward her. For a moment, his golden eyes softened. "You must be Clara," he said. "The woman who tamed the man of the mountain." She took a step closer. "I didn't tame him. I loved him." Elias's expression darkened. "Love is the cruelest forge of all." The temperature in the room began to rise, the metal walls creaking. Sparks danced along the floor. Samuel pulled Clara behind him. "He's feeding off the fire," he said. "The mountain's heart. It's still alive beneath us." Elias raised his hand, and the forge blazed to life, flames curling like serpents. "This place gave me life," he said. "And now it will give me strength." Samuel's voice hardened. "Not if I take it back." He reached into Clara's satchel and pulled out the glowing crystal, the heart of the forge. It pulsed violently in his grip, reacting to Elias's energy. The creature's eyes widened. "You wouldn't dare." Samuel's hand shook, the heat searing through his bandages. "You were made from this fire, Elias. It can unmake you too. Then you'll burn with me." Elias roared, stepping forward, his molten body igniting into flame. The forge trembled as the fire spread across the walls. Clara screamed, pulling at Samuel's arm. "Samuel, stop, you'll die." He looked at her, really looked at her, and in that one glance, everything passed between them. "Love, regret, acceptance," he said softly. "You once told me fire doesn't hurt if you respect it." Her eyes filled with tears. "Please don't do this." He smiled faintly. "I'm not afraid anymore." Then he turned back to Elias and hurled the crystal into the forge. The explosion was blinding. Flames erupted from the furnace, spiraling upward like a living thing. Elias screamed, a sound that was both human and not, echoing through the mountain like thunder. His molten form began to melt, collapsing into the fire that had birthed him. Clara fell to the ground, shielding her face from the heat. She could barely see through the light. Samuel's silhouette standing before the blaze, unmoving, his hands outstretched as if holding the mountain itself together. "Samuel," she cried. He didn't turn. The fire swallowed him whole. And then, silence. The forge went dark. Dash dash dash. When Clara awoke, the air was cool. The storm had passed. Morning light filtered through the cracks in the roof. The forge was gone, just a crater of blackened stone and ash. She sat up slowly, coughing. "Samuel." No answer. Her eyes searched the ruins desperately, and then she saw it. His hammer, half buried in the ash, still warm to the touch. Beside it lay a small, metallic shard, smooth, silver, faintly glowing. She picked it up, her fingers trembling. It pulsed once, gently, like a heartbeat. Tears filled her eyes. "Samuel." Behind her, the wind stirred. For a moment, she swore she heard his voice, soft, carried by the mountain air. "The fire doesn't hurt if you respect it." Clara pressed the shard to her chest. "I'll keep it safe," she whispered. She turned and began the long walk back down the mountain. The morning sun broke through the clouds, spilling gold across the valley. The forge was gone, but the mountain felt alive again, peaceful, breathing, watching. Weeks passed. Clara rebuilt the cabin, alone at first. She worked the forge herself, using Samuel's old tools. Her hands, once trembling, grew steady. The villagers who had once whispered about the man of the mountain now came to her for help. They said her fire never went out, no matter the storm, no matter the cold. And each night, before she slept, she placed that silver shard beside the bed. It glowed faintly in the dark, like a tiny flame that refused to die. Sometimes, when the wind howled just right, she heard the faint ring of hammer against anvil, far away, deep in the mountain's heart. And she knew he was still there. Not as a man, not as a ghost, but as the fire that forged everything she had left. Clara smiled through her tears and whispered into the quiet, "You were right, Samuel, you can't destroy what you create." The mountain exhaled a warm gust of wind, and the forge's fire flickered back to life, soft and golden. And for the first time in a long time, Clara felt no fear. Only warmth. The story of the man of the mountain ended where it began, with fire, love, and the kind of creation that never truly dies. Because some fires aren't meant to be extinguished. They're meant to burn forever, quietly, faithfully, in the hearts of those who remember. Thank you so much for watching this story till the very end. Your support means more than words can ever say. If you felt the depth of this journey, don't forget to give it a like, share it with someone who needs it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. Together, we'll keep bringing powerful stories to life, and your presence here makes all the difference.